Hello fellow introverts, and welcome back to the channel. Today I would like, if you would, humor me, pause it, if you will. What if H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper were the same person? Now I know what you're thinking. Yeah, maybe, but not really. Alright, well, so let's get into this, shall we? So, we all know H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper are two of the most notorious serial killers in history. While Holmes, obviously, he was convicted of his crimes, sentenced to death, the identity of Jack the Ripper, on the other hand, has been a mystery since the crimes were committed. But now we have H.H. Holmes' great-great-grandson, Jeff Mudgett. He has a theory. He believes that H.H. Holmes and Jack the Ripper were the same person, and that one brilliant man was committing gruesome crimes and killing people on two continents over the same time period. Could it be true? Potentially. So, in 2006, Scotland Yard and the BBC created a composite photo of Jack the Ripper using eyewitness accounts from 1888, resulting in the photo looks very much like H.H. Holmes, while Jeff Mudgett took the two photos to retired investigators who agreed that Holmes bore striking resemblance to the suspected Jack the Ripper. In fact, both investigators said it was a close match to a composite photo that they have ever seen. While the resemblance is hard to deny, photo evidence doesn't quite line up with the theory that Mudgett presents in his book, Bloodstains. He argues that Holmes sent an assistant to commit the Ripper murders, so Holmes would not have been present for any eyewitnesses to identify. The Dear Boss letter was believed to have been written by Jack the Ripper. It was received by the Central News Agency in London, September 27, 1888, and forwarded to Scotland Yard on September 29th. In the letter, the killer describes his plan to cut off the ears of his next victim. Okay, and then on September 30th, the body of Catherine Eddowes was found with one earlobe severed. While it was never proven that the Ripper wrote the Dear Boss letter, mention of cutting victims' ears was a chilling reference. The letter was not published in the papers until after Eddowes' body was found, meaning this could have been a real connection to the killer. Also, a handwriting analysis expert recommended by the British Library compared the Dear Boss letter to a known handwriting sample of H.H. Holmes. The expert concluded that they had been written by the same hand. Just to be safe, samples were sent for computer analysis to confirm the expert's findings. The computer results showed that there were 97.95% chance that H.H. Holmes wrote the Dear Boss letter. Now, we all know Jack the Ripper's hunting ground was the Whitechapel neighborhood in London. H.H. Holmes also had a connection to Whitechapel. His friend from the University of Michigan, Edmund Buckley, came from a wealthy Whitechapel family. Buckley and Holmes were partners in crime. They ran insurance scams and often sold corpses to medical facilities. Not an uncommon way to make money in the 1800s. According to census records, Holmes had a residence in Whitechapel. After he tried to sell a corpse to a local hospital, a formal complaint had been filed against him. These records place him in the Whitechapel area around the time of the Ripper's murders. What was he doing? Was he doing more than his usual corpse peddling? There are 5 victims, known as the Canonical Five, which we've covered on this channel, who are widely believed to have been killed by Jack the Ripper. The murder spanned from August 31st to November 9th, 1888. We know that Holmes purchased land to build the Chicago murder castle in July 1888. It may seem unlikely that Holmes would travel to London immediately afterwards, but construction on his castle didn't begin until the spring of 1889. In fact, there are no records of him being in Chicago at all that winter. Perhaps Holmes took a winter holiday in London to get an early start on his killing spree? After the murder of Annie Chapman, the divisional police surgeon believed that the Ripper killed her in order to remove her womb. This would have taken skill, so police suggest that the killer was somebody with knowledge of anatomy. Holmes definitely had the medical knowledge. He would experiment on animals at the age of 11, torturing them to the brink of death and then bringing them back to life several times. He also spent his youth as an assistant to the local doctor, learning everything about the human body in life and death. The doctor wrote the recommendation letter for Holmes when he applied to the University of Michigan, where he became a medical student. Now, some say Holmes may have orchestrated the Ripper's murder to create a diversion. Some believe that H.H. Holmes orchestrated the Jack the Ripper murders to hide the real plan, to kill rich women and use organs to make himself a youth serum. So we kinda are leaning into like evil villain territory. This is kinda where we're at now. Holmes' diary entries, which have not been published, detail how Holmes trained his assistant to carry out the Ripper's murders by causing a sensation to distract the public with Jack the Ripper. Holmes was free to target upper-class women whom he presumed had healthier organs to use in his serum. Jeff Mudgett claims that after he found out about his creepy lineage, Holmes' diary was passed down to him through his family. In it, Holmes wrote descriptions of training his assistant to carry out these gruesome Ripper's murders so that he could go kidnap and murder wealthy women undetected. This seems like definitive proof that Holmes was a mastermind behind the Jack the Ripper, but the diaries have never been published. Mudgett quotes them in his book, Bloodstains, but doesn't provide any photocopies to back up the claims. He says, for legal reasons, there's no statute on limitations for murder, and the police might want the diaries for evidence someday. If Mudgett's theory is true, it means that several families in London lost loved ones and never knew what happened to her. She disappeared, and with no body, there would be no crime for the police to investigate. That MO sounds a lot like what Holmes did to anyone who had the misfortune of passing through his murder castle only a few months later in Chicago. Well, that's all the compelling evidence I have, so if you have anything to support or definitively debunk this hypothesis, let me know, and we'll talk about it. If you want to have a good conversation, join the Discord. We got a few members there. We just started it a couple weeks ago, so we got topics, anything you want to talk about, as long as we're respectful. Alright, and with that, I will see you nerds later.